guys, Mr. Gibson here. I'm going to show you guys about other elasticities, topic 2.5 here. Here's our enduring understandings, learning objective and essential knowledge. Enduring understandings we're still talking about incentives and constraints, just very econ basic kind of stuff. Learning objectives, we're going to again calculate some elasticities like we have with supply and demand elasticities. But this time we're going to talk about um, what's called income elasticity and determining whether a good is normal or inferior, and cross price elasticity, which helps us understand if two goods are related to each other, whether they're substitutes, complements, or not related at all. All right, so let's go ahead and jump right into this. Some slides here. Um, I have an essential question here. Can we measure the substitution and income effects on the demand curve? The answer is this will help us do that. Okay. Because the demand curve is downward sloping because of substitution effects, meaning, when the price changes on a good, people can choose to go consume similar goods or uh, come back to that good and consume more of it. Whereas income effects mean that uh, as prices go up or down, it essentially makes people more or less wealthy. Um, and affects how much you can actually consume of that product. Okay. So we're talking about that and then um, somewhat. So anyway, we've got income inelasticity here. We have normal goods versus inferior goods. Normal goods, the simple definition of this is that as someone's income increases, the consumption of these goods also increases. Okay. These can include luxuries and necessities, and we call them normal goods because that's typically how most goods react. That's how most people react to the consumption of most goods. As your income goes up, you will consume more of everything. Okay, but that's not necessarily true. Um, there are some goods that we call inferior goods, and what happens there is as income increases, consumption of these goods actually decrease. Okay, and vice versa. As income decreases, you can consume more of these goods. So let's talk about some examples of these. Um, so I put here luxury goods, fine cars, towels, watches. I'm sure you can think of many things that are luxury goods. And the idea here is that your income would have to increase significantly for you to consume more of these. Okay. And as your income improves significantly, you consume more and more and more of these things. Okay. Uh, whereas normal goods, I put tennis shoes and just some regular old chicken here. Again, you know, when your income goes up, you will consume more of these, but um, how many pairs of tennis shoes do you really need? And I'm not talking about the fine tennis shoes, the luxury tennis shoes that you see, but if you just need a regular old walking shoe and chicken, if you're gonna eat chicken during the week, I'm not talking about fine dining chicken, but your income increases, you'll consume more of food stuff. That's just a normal good, just kind of a normal necessity, bread, something like that. Versus these inferior goods. So I'm showing here is like uh, folks tend to eat ramen noodles when they're in college, these cheap ramen noodles when they're in college because their income is low. And as their income increases, they consume less and less of that. Okay, so it works in the opposite direction as normal goods. Uh, Greyhound bus, uh, if you're looking to travel and your income has gone down significantly, you may not have the option to drive your own car or to take a flight, and you'd have to use the Greyhound bus. That might be an example of an inferior good. Okay, and we're not making value judgments here. It's not. These are some examples I use. You can make arguments probably either way for any of them. It doesn't mean luxury goods are good versus inferior goods are bad. In economics, we're not making value judgments. We're just simply defining something that we see within the economy, we see within markets. So I'm not saying a Greyhound bus is somehow a bad good. A Greyhound bus can be very nice. It's just typically I would assume that as people's incomes increase, they don't take the bus. Okay, so uh, let's jump into this. First, let's talk about the calculation. Similar to the price elasticity of demand and supply, we're talking about percent changes here. And with income inelasticity, we're going to talk about the percent change in quantity divided by the percent change in income. Okay, so we're going to still calculate percent changes, and it's going to give us a number. So let's look at an example to go through this. Okay, suppose an employee's income increases from $40,000 to $50,000. Instead of purchasing five tickets to Titans games to five Titans games, he now purchases eight Titans tickets to Titans games. Okay, calculate the income elasticity of Titans tickets. Okay, so let me go on here. If it'll pull up. Okay, great. Let me do the percent change in quantity demanded. All right. And our final was eight Titans tickets minus five Titans tickets over the initial of five tickets. So again, from earlier videos, we know a percent change is final minus initial over initial. Okay. Our final after this income change was eight tickets minus the initial, which was five tickets, divided by the initial, which was five times 100%. Okay. Now, with demand elasticity, price elasticity of demand, I didn't include negatives or positives, but with this stuff, it'll actually be important. Okay. So there is no absolute value here. If it's a negative, it's a negative. If it's a positive, positive. In this case, it is a positive. 3/5 times 100%. Okay. So 3/5 is a 0.6. This means it's going to be 60%. Okay. Now that's this percent change. I'll probably end up using just the fraction anyway. Okay. Back to the example real quick. His income increased from 40,000 to 50,000. Let's do in this case, percent. Little delta symbol means change. I'm going to put I for income. Okay. Our final is 50,000 minus 40,000 divided by the initial, which is 40,000 times 100%. Okay. That's 10,000 over 40,000, which is 1/4 times 100%. And 1/4 is 25%. Okay. Now, if we remember, income elasticity is the percent change in quantity demanded over the percent change in income. All right. And that's 60% divided by 25%. I like to use fractions because I don't really want to divide 60 by 25. And I remember that the 100 times the percent would cancel out from top to bottom. So I can actually just do 3/5 divided by 1/4. We keep it, change it, flip it. So 3/5. We keep that. We change the sign to times. And we flip the 1/4 to a 4/1. And that gives me 3 times 4, which is 12, 5 times 1, which is 5. Okay. 5 goes into 10 twice, so this will be 2 and 2/5, which is 2.4. Okay. 10, 10 over 5 is 2. That leaves over 2/5. 2/5 is 40% or zero point 0.4. Okay, so our elasticity of income is zero point 0.4. So the elasticity of income elasticity of these Titans tickets is 2.4. Okay, let me just put a box around that to remind us. Okay, so let's see what this means. My feeling of the on this is it's positive. So, and as his income increased, his amount of Titans tickets he's purchased increased and kind of increased significantly too. So my feeling is yes, it'll probably be a normal good. My feeling about Titans tickets is that those are nothing usually essential. So you could probably think of those as luxury goods because you can watch the Titans on TV and you'll survive your life without having to ever go to a Titans game. But it might be fun to go to one. Okay, so anyway, let's look at what these calculations mean. Okay, all right. So this tells us what the calculation is, the percent change in demand over the percent change in income. Normal goods are positive. Okay, so first thing off the list, as we anticipated, Titans tickets have a positive income elasticity. It's a normal good. Uh, Luxury goods, where the income elasticity is greater than 1. Okay, so our price elasticity our income elasticity for the Titans tickets was 2.4. So as we predicted, luxury good. I didn't anticipate Titans tickets being considered a necessity. Okay. But if the income elasticity is between 0 and 1, it is a normal good, but it's also considered a necessity. So, I mean, I assume that this employee, just because his income increased, um, just because his income increased by 25%, doesn't mean that he's going to go out and buy over 25% more bread. He might consume a little more bread or nicer bread, but he's probably going to consume about the same amount of sandwiches, maybe a little more with his income increase. So that's a necessity. We didn't anticipate this being a negative income elasticity because it's not an inferior product. So inferior goods have a negative income elasticity. Okay, so if this were a negative, if his income had gone up and he actually purchased fewer Titans tickets, then we might say that this is an inferior good. You can think of it this way. Sometimes there's a little bit of a substitution effect here too. Let's say he had season tickets to Vanderbilt football, right? It's a less quality product, and because he has a higher income, he's decided to go with more Titans tickets and fewer Vanderbilt football tickets. Well, you'd have to say that his Vanderbilt football tickets would be an inferior good. Okay, so don't tell Mr. Herman that, but that is a possibility. Okay. Let's get on to this the cross price elasticity. And we use this to determine whether how goods are related to each other and whether they're substitute goods or complement goods. I didn't write down here no relation, but we could also figure that out too. And we'll talk about that anyway. So first, let's talk about substitute goods. They're goods that are consumed as one or the other. Okay. So it's as the name entails, I can consume this good, or I could easily substitute it with this other good. Okay. If the price of one of the goods increases, so ceteris paribus, so the other price stayed the same, then the quantity of the other good will go up and vice versa. Okay. So if the price decreases of one good, the quantity of that other good will decrease too. We'll see with some examples. Versus complement goods are a little more intuitive here. They're goods that are consumed together. So as the price of one increases, the quantity of the other one decreases. And so vice versa, as the price of one decreases, the quantity of the other one also decreases. Okay. So they work together. So substitute goods are against each other. Complement goods are with each other. Okay. So what goods are these? Here's some examples. So substitute goods. Okay. A lot of brands here, right? Um, Coke and Pepsi, they're both sodas, similar products. Okay. They're substitutes for each other. If the price of Coca Cola went up compared to the price of Pepsi, people would probably consume more Pepsi. Same with McDonald's burgers versus Burger King burgers. Um, Potatoes at different farms. Okay. If there's a substitute and the price of one goes up, they'll substitute with another. You got this Crest and Colgate. It doesn't have to be the same, or it doesn't have to be very, very similar goods. It could be goods that are somewhat similar, but not exactly the same. So, um, transportation is an example here, and we often see that with, um, if the price of cars goes up significantly, or we'll see in a second if the cost of driving a car goes up significantly, more people use public transportation or bike, okay, or vice versa. Coffee and tea, those are good substitutes. Um, Totally different products, totally different things, but they have kind of the same effect. They're both uh, hot caffeinated drinks that people tend to drink in the morning. So if the price of coffee went up significantly, people would probably consume more tea, or vice versa. Okay. Complement goods, look to the right here. These are goods that are consumed together. Often people eat peanut butter with jelly, so you call those complement goods. Doesn't mean everyone does, but typically you would. A lot of people do consume those together. Other two examples here are pretty close complements. Pencil and paper. It's hard to imagine purchasing paper without really having some sort of writing utensil to consume with it. Uh, this old DVD player with a DVD, well, those are really, really close complements because, you if you're going to purchase a DVD, you better have something to play the DVD with. Okay, so those are complement goods consumed together. Okay, so let's go into this calculation. So be very careful here. Cross price elasticity. It's the percent change of quantity of good X over the percent change of price of good Y. Okay, so the change in quantity of one good over the change in price of another good. Okay, and we compare from there. Okay, so let's look at an example before we go into what these calculations look like. So it says, suppose the price for gasoline increases by 50%. The quantity of SUVs decreases by 20%. Calculate the cross price elasticity. All right, so come on down here to a new page. Now notice I don't have to calculate the percent change in this case. Okay. Sometimes that happens. A lot of times on AP exams, is they just go ahead and they give you the percentages, which is really nice because that's less of a calculation. Okay, so we're gonna say that the percent change in quantity of good Y over percent change in price X. Okay, and in this case, that's the percent change in the quantity of um, SUVs. And notice it decreases, so it's going to be negative. So negative 20% over the percent change in gasoline. The price of gasoline is 50%. Percentages cancel, ones cancel, and I have negative 2/5, which is negative 0.4. So our cross price elasticity is negative 0.4. Okay, negative 0.4. All right. So as we could probably predict, okay, um, gasoline and SUVs, they're complement products. Okay. You need gas to run an SUV. Okay. And you need kind of copious amounts of gasoline to run an SUV. Okay. So I'd say they're probably complement goods. So let's keep that in mind. We ended up with a negative elasticity. Okay. So let's see. All right. So let's look at these calculation meanings. So we have substitutes. Closed substitutes have a strong positive cross elasticity. Okay. So again, if it was a substitute, we'd have a positive cross price elasticity. And if they're closed substitutes, meaning, it's a one to one substitution. If the price of one goes up by 1 penny, everyone would go and consume the other. So let's take the soda examples. Say Coca Cola and um, Pepsi are perfect substitutes. I know they're not. Some people really do prefer Pepsi over Coca Cola or vice versa. And say Coca Cola was $1 and Pepsi was $1, and Coca Cola decided to um, increase its price by 1 cent. Well, no one would buy Coca Cola. They would simply buy uh, Pepsi because it was a perfect substitute. Okay. So that would be an infinite, uh, a positive infinity cross price elasticity. Okay. So that would be strong, very strong closed substitutes. Okay, and there's some examples in the world of that. You can think of like uh, different agricultural products, stuff like that. Okay, my wheat is not any different than my neighbor's wheat that's growing across across the way from me. Okay, so anyway, the higher the number, the higher the positive number, the more of a substitute it is. Uh, Complements, negative numbers. Okay, the higher the negative number, the more close of a complement it is. Okay. I like this example here: game consoles and software games. Okay. That might be near a negative infinity because uh, how can you buy a game and a video game if you don't have the video game console? So complements are going to be negative, and the larger the negative value, the absolute value of that negative number is, the more of a complement it is, the closer the complements are. And then we get to this the unrelated products. If the cross elasticity of demand is zero, that means that they're unrelated. That means that the percent change in the price of one good did not change the quantity demanded of the other good at all. So there's no effect on each other. So they're not related. Okay. So you have substitutes, complements, and unrelated products. Okay. Quick recap on some of our learning objectives here. We did the elasticity calculations. We saw some calculations. We talked about what income elasticity is, the percent change in quantity demanded over the percent change in income. We use it to determine whether a good is normal, which is positive, versus inferior, which is negative. Cross price elasticity, percent change in quantity demanded divided by the percent change in price of another good. Okay, so two separate goods. The percent change in demanded of one good over the percent change in price of another good, to see how the goods are related to each other. Goods can have a positive cross price elasticity, which means they're substitutes, a negative cross price elasticity, which is complements, meaning they're consumed together. So substitutes are rival to each other, complements are consumed together. And then finally, if there's a cross price elasticity of zero, that means they're not related at all. Thanks for your attention.